Hello, 179ers. You are going to be taking your annual suicide prevention training. And this year, of course, it's virtual. And we are going to be inviting the First Shirts just to share with you some of their information about self-care and resiliency. As you know, we've really, over probably the last 9 to 10 years, have been focusing on self-care. And so today we really want to get the First Shirts input, and maybe something somebody says maybe will resonate with you and help you find the hope that you're looking for. So the first thing we want to talk about is self-care. And so Mark, why don't you share with us just what self-care means to you?
Self-care is so important because if you're not ready and you're not fit per se, you're not ready to help others. So it's real important that you get adequate rest, you take breaks when you need to, you exercise, you stay busy, not dwelling on the things that are going on around you, limit your social media time, just basically taking care of yourself so you can help the others, your loved ones around you and your coworkers when you come back.
Sounds great. How about Danny? What does self-care mean to you?
Self-care to me means taking the time to take care of yourself, your mental state, your emotional state, and your physical state, and also those that are around you at home. And when it comes to self-care, just taking time out of the day to reflect on the more positive things in your days and in your life versus the negatives or what could happen bad. To take time to look at yourself and truly just reflect on what you're grateful for, and your wingmen and your leadership that is working very hard to make sure we can all come back together. So, but again, just taking time for yourself, for your mental state, your physical, and your emotional well-being.
Thank you. So yes, so when we're talking about self-care, and especially now during COVID-19, I think I shared in an email with you that I had really been struggling with self-care. I feel like this is one area where I feel like I really excel in, is taking care of myself. It's that balance of walking through so many people's journeys that I need to make sure that I'm able to stay in my journey and be healthy. But during COVID-19, I really struggled with that in the beginning. I think I shared with you. A lot of what I'm doing now is telehealth. So I'm sitting behind a computer and I'm doing therapy or just talking with people. And most of the time, I guess I've learned through this process that the way that I decompressed was on my drive home. And because I wasn't having that drive home at the end of the day, I was really like agitated, irritable. My family really didn't like me. And so I had to quickly readjust and decide, how could I decompress at the end of my day. I know many of you have shared with me like some of the struggles of all of a sudden being a full-time parent, a full-time teacher, a full-time employee, and just trying to find that balance has really been a struggle. And so sometimes it's okay to have a timeout. I always say, when kiddos are little, we give them a minute timeout for each year of age they are. So just think of that as an adult, you get a minute for each year. So if you're 30 years old, you get a 30-minute timeout. So make sure that you're taking advantage of that, okay? And speaking of timeouts, we're going to move right into the importance of sleep. So Benjamin, why don't you share with us your thoughts on sleep?
Well, it's funny that you picked me for this one. I work thirds in my civilian job, so sleep hygiene is very, very important. Having 3 kids, the hustle and bustle of life going around your house, vehicles, sounds, everything's working and everything's moving during the day, just when I'm trying to sleep. So trying to set up a healthy environment and system so you can get those vital hours of sleep definitely when I don't get them, it affects my interactions with my family, interactions with people at work, um, interactions in my own body. I'm not getting that recharge that I so desperately need. So being able to set the environment and and reflect on how you sleep best, and setting up that environment and getting a routine going all the time really sets you up for success. Getting that vital recharge that you need to attack the day.
Thank you. Brian, how about you talk a little bit about maybe the importance of sleep, especially now during COVID-19 and being at home. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sleep, especially during this COVID-19 crisis going on, sleep's pretty important because all the changes in life right now is definitely taking a toll on you mentally. You want to make sure you get your good 6 to 8 hours of sleep. I know everybody's working at home, trying to be a teacher, work full time, and have kids full time. Definitely important because if you don't get enough sleep, you're going to burn out pretty quick, and definitely affects your production at work and quality time with your family as well.
Thank you. It's interesting that you mentioned 6 to 8 hours. The Institute of Sleep, they actually say that most of us only need between 6 and 7 hours of sleep. I say most of us. I know some of you are probably now, you have got to be kidding because I need 10 hours. And so I think what's important to know is you need to get the sleep that's appropriate for you. And when we don't get sleep, it impacts our whole well-being. So you think of, if we're talking our mental health, when we don't get enough sleep, we get stressed out. We know what stress does to the body. It's the #1 killer. It comes out in things like heart attacks, stroke, suicide. And so please don't ever dismiss the importance of sleep. It helps to recharge your brain. It gives your body, when we talk about timeouts, it gives your body a very long time out. So please, if you have questions about sleep hygiene or you're struggling with getting enough sleep, we're going to list a lot of the helping entities at the end of this presentation, but don't be afraid to reach out to us. Resiliency. We have preached resiliency for what, 9, 10 years? And we look at those 4 different domains when we talk about resiliency. So if we go back over those 4 pillars of resiliency, which I have no doubt that all of you know them, we're talking about physical, psychological, spiritual, and social. And right now, when we talk about social distancing, it can be really challenging. So Alicia, why don't you share with us about resiliency and social distancing?
Yeah, so I know that some of us, or maybe a lot of us, are really struggling with the fact that although we are blessed to be at home staying safe, we are missing that connection with our people. And so that is one thing I've really tried to do during this time, is develop ways to still connect with friends, family. You said spiritual well-being, so being able to connect with my church family. So setting up things like we're doing today, like Zoom calls, to make sure that I can see those people face to face. That's a way to connect and still maintain that social distancing. So I definitely recommend finding ways that you can still connect with people during this time. And then you can see on the slide here, it says limit media exposure. So I know there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace when it comes to COVID and what do you believe? And I'm an avid believer that just limiting what I buy into on social media is a great way to maybe take care of my mental health. So I'm not over here trying to run through all the scenarios that could be playing out.
Thank you. And it's interesting you mentioned that, because we've all heard the wine with DeWine at 2 p.m. And so 2 things there. So like, too much wine is never good, right? And too much DeWine is never good. And I think in the beginning, many of us held to that 2 o'clock news conference. And sometimes we just have to walk away from things, because it becomes very overwhelming and we don't know what to do with that or how to process it. I want to talk a little bit about social distancing because, again, it's not social isolation. And I think, Alicia, you talk about some really good um, ways to not isolate from others. I think we have to be creative right now. And so, how do we do that? I think I shared with you for my family, we went out, we high people, and that was a great way just not only to give us something to do, but to lift other people up. So, how do you social distance and not social isolate? Is it by Zoom meetings? Like, I have some people who tell me they do, I'm trying to think of what it's called. Maybe some of you can help me. It's like house parties. And you can get on that platform and you can do games and lots of different things. And they've really sort of connected with their family and friends on that. So, I mean, there's lots of different ways to connect with people and be in the moment. And if you're struggling to find one of those, please reach out to us because I'm going to tell you what, I learned so much from other people during this about ways to connect. So don't be afraid to reach out to see maybe different ideas that others have. So we want to build connections. So Josh, why don't you talk to us a little bit about building connections?
So building connections, and I kind of want to also, if I could, kind of touch on maintaining those connections. But so one thing is through the media that we're using right now, Zoom and things like that. And one thing that I've seen, so I've had the opportunity through this to be at home with my 7-year-old who's not in school, but is in school, right? So he has a weekly phone call with his teachers in his class, and they basically play games. They have a scavenger hunt, and they run around and show each other what they found in the house. But it's a simple thing that where their class is still building connections, where they're showing each other what they found and having, just dialogue with each other to stay connected. And that's all, spearheaded by his teacher. So it's kind of the same thing as airmen in leadership, right? So she's serving as the leader, and all of his friends are going through and building connections as well.
Sounds good. I think that right now that's so important in building and maintaining connections, because what we know is when people tend to get overwhelmed, they tend to isolate. And so, just making sure that you're sending a text or calling and just saying, hey, thinking about you, hope you're doing okay. It's a connection that maybe they needed more than you did. So, we are going to move into signs of distress now. And, we go over the signs and symptoms of different types of mental issues. And so when we talk about these, I think the one thing that I would really encourage you is to watch for any change in people. This is just a list of some things that could be a red flag. But I think what's important to know is that you know people in your circle. So you know when they change. You know what, like my family was quick to say to me, like, what's up with you? Because you aren't being so nice. I mean, you're irritable. So, I mean, I think we're quick to see that in people. But what happens to our airmen or our family members who live alone? And maybe we aren't able to see when they're having difficulty sleeping or things like that. So that's where just connecting with them is so important. Again, we have to be able to identify distress. How do we know that our airmen or our family are in distress? And I've said it probably from the first day that I took this position almost 10 years ago. What's important is getting to know people, okay? And right now we're really challenged with that, right? I mean, I think of our student flighters who are just coming on. How do we connect with them? How do we make sure that we get to know them? And that's why, you need to be creative right now and just making sure that you're reaching out and you're talking to people. And, one of, I think, the best ways to do that, and Dave, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about that, is remember our ACE Care Escort. So if you want to just share, Dave, a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Well, when we're, when we're confronted with, what looks like a change in somebody, one of the most difficult things really is to take that first step and to ask them. You really have to, sort of get out of your comfort zone, and you got to go to that place and say, I've kind of stepped back, and your behaviors are not really characteristic of how you normally are. What's going on? And that can start the conversation right there. And when you find out that something is different, you're like, look, what can I do to help you, and all that. And once they realize that you're doing this because you care about them, and I'm going to be right here with you, I'm going to see you through, then just that feeling of isolation and loneliness and wanting to just turn within inside themselves and not connect with anybody, you're going to start opening up that door. And it can be a big game changer.
Absolutely. I think sometimes when I talk about ACE and I ask people what the most difficult part of ACE is, I think it's pretty much between all three. Some people just have difficulty asking, hey, are you okay? I think sometimes, it's sort of just human nature to say, how are you? But I think it takes somebody who is really passionate and who really cares to stick around and wait for the answer. So I always say, don't just say, how are you? And just keep walking past somebody. Make sure you stick around for the answer. I think too, like, I have to be mindful, like for me, if you have ever had an interaction with me, those questions that I asked you are you suicidal? Are you homicidal? And I think for some people, they aren't comfortable asking that, okay? So I think it's okay to just ask somebody, how they are, to show that they care, that you care. I think too, what becomes difficult is when you have to escort them to a helping entity, okay? You can't ask somebody how they are, hear that they're struggling, and then just leave it there. You have to follow through with that. And I think, it's important for me to be mindful of just some of those concerns for people reaching out for mental health treatment. So Mark, when we talk about escorting a person to, whether it's me, the chaplains, whoever it might be, what do you feel, what can you share in regards to that?
I've had a lot of experience in this, both of my civilian career and some of the military. It's not an easy thing to do because it's something, you've learned some information here that most people are afraid to move forward with. However, you have to. Well, some of the best advice that was ever given to me is to treat everybody around you, no matter what they're going through, as if it was your own brother, your own sister. If it was your mom and your dad, how would you take care of them? You wouldn't just leave them alone. So at this point in time, it's great to show that you care by going to the next step. You're not just going to stop because it's sometimes uncomfortable to say we need to go to the next step. Now we're going to get some help for you. Or you could show them some of the light at the end of the tunnel. We're not just going to leave you here because we care about you. We're going to go talk to Vivian, or start out with somebody like the first sergeant and get you over there, or somebody that you're really comfortable with to get you the help that you need.
Thank you. I also hear some of the comments that, if I go and get mental health treatment, it's going to impact my military career. And, I am very much aware of those concerns. And so if that really is a concern for you, I'm okay with just discussing that with you. My mission is to make sure that you have the best quality of life and are able to be successful in what your goals are. And so please know that just because you reach out to me or you get mental health treatment, that doesn't mean that it impacts your military career negatively. So again, if you have questions in regards to that and you would like to have more conversation offline, please make sure you reach out to me. Go slow, okay? This is a slogan that we have heard a little bit more of lately. It's when you recognize an airman in distress and use ACE, remember to also go slow. Safe locks are the outside of home storage. We have passed out hundreds of locks for safes, for gun storage, for firearms. And so, Benjamin, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, the importance of that acronym, me personally, I have weapons and firearms in the house. So having that stuff safeguarded at all times as a normal routine is utmost, the utmost importance, especially for children, other family members in the house, especially if someone's in distress. Those things need to be safeguarded. That way, it's not you don't have that intent or opportunity to make do on any of those maybe self-harm ideas or that ideation that anyone might be having. But it also is a natural safety routine for your family, especially if you have children, to have those things safeguarded at all times anyways. That way there's not any type of accidental issues with weapons or tools or anything like that. So so I believe that slogan has, it's multifaceted, but definitely something you should live by at all times.
Absolutely. I think, just protecting everybody, kiddos, everybody in your household. So if you're in the need of a safe lock, please look us up, because we have plenty of locks. So if you need one, let us know. Here are different resources, okay? You see my number on there, the chaplains, family readiness. You see military one source, give an hour. These are all different resources that are available to you. I know sometimes people are hesitant talking with others. And so and I don't see it, yes, at the bottom, the confidential chat at Military Crisis Line Net, there's a number there that you can text. So if you would rather text one of these helping entities, you're able to do that. But they're all for you. So I guess our goal is to make sure that you get the resources that you need. So I'm just going to open it up to our fur shirts. Is there anything else any of you would like to share?
Some real good comments out there. It covered a lot of it pretty well.
Yeah, I would just say make sure you're staying connected. And it's so hard right now, as Vivian touched on, to really recognize these signs with people because we aren't with them face to face, shoulder to shoulder. We aren't even really coming together fully on base that one time a month. So, finding different ways to kind of monitor your wingman's behavior. We have to get creative and, different things like social media. As much as we say, you don't want to be on social media all the time. I know I've used that during this time to kind of look for different signs of distress that could be coming out, whether it be anger or withdrawing altogether. So be creative, stay in contact, and take care of yourselves. Reach out if you need anything.
Anybody else?
I'd like to say establishing that normalcy, getting outside, maybe go for a walk, get some exercise. Instead of thinking of being stressed, oh my gosh, we're going to eventually have a fitness test and things to do. It does so much for your well-being to get out and just be outside for at least 30 minutes and go for a walk, see nature, stay connected, FaceTime, call your friends, your first sergeant, and don't be afraid to reach out when you need to.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I hear over and over again for those who aren't working right now is, I sleep in, I stay in my pajamas, and I'm okay with a pajama day every now and then, but I think just keeping to your routine and your structure, making sure that you get up, you put something on besides your pajamas. I say it's twofold for me, it's staying in that structure, but also making sure that I'm putting my pants on every day to make sure they still fit, okay? So it's sort of twofold, okay? So I think that the routine and the structure is very helpful, but also knowing that it's okay to have a pajama day every now and then.
Yeah, I'd like to say that anyone can be a leader. It doesn't matter what rank you're at or what you're doing in life. And one way to lead in especially the A of the ACE, the ask, and if you're not getting through to airmen, or they're in distress, or neighbors or family members, don't hesitate to be vulnerable. A lot of being vulnerable and showing and humanizing yourself will take down some of those barriers to discussion and dialogue, and to really get at what the issue is at heart. So so being genuine, showing that vulnerability with one another can really bring down the barriers to actually having true meaningful dialogue and discussions, and getting people the help that they need. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add, when it comes to resiliency and true leadership, whether it's us as first sergeants, or an NCO, or a supervisor, or a chief master sergeant, General Goldstein said in his book, we see what is done, we don't see what is said. And so what that means during this time is we're not all around each other all the time, but there's actions that we can do as leaders, as supervisors, as wingmen, that airmen and our wingmen can see. You can say things, but making that phone call in the middle of the month, just out of nowhere, checking on someone that is having a difficult time, that's things that people can actually see, caring. And part of that is being disciplined for ourselves, knowing what your limitations are when it comes to projects around the house, time with your family, taking time apart. And I think a couple people have already mentioned keeping up on your fitness, taking walks, getting out in nature, and not just doing the same thing every single day, not just getting in a routine that just gets boring. So anyway, I think overall, building that resiliency is about showing people that you truly care, and doing things out of the blue versus the predictable times. So I think that goes a long way.
I hope that when you guys are watching this, that you can sense how much you are cared for. So maybe we haven't met in person over the last few months, but I hope you see through your first shirts and through Colonel Thomas and Chief Hunt and myself just how much we value you and how much we care about you. And I really like to think, and I personally believe, that we are all in it together. And so no, you have the resources you need. If you need to talk, I'm just going to leave you on this. Please, please reach out to us. Thank you. And hopefully we will meet all together soon. Take care.